I know the European market is so difficult to get into. Europe is a continent, not a country. So don't try navigating that by yourself in the US by coming here. Find a
Mm,
partner here. There's so much opportunity for collaboration and working
yeah.
together.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the Fast Forward podcast. I am excited for our conversation called World Opportunity, where I'm talking to some people who I adore and respect from around the world who can share with us the various opportunities that are available to develop your career and your business. So today I'm hopping across the pond to Europe. Really excited about this conversation because I had the chance to get to know this lovely person a couple years ago at the emergence of something that is near and dear to my heart, and that is minority business development. I know for a lot of the listeners out there, you might not know that there are similar business advocacy groups that you're probably familiar with seeing in the States, that they exist in other parts of the world too. And that's why I thought it was important for you to meet someone who is not just doing the work, but pioneering and leading the work around this important conversation of global business development and advocacy. So, Lushentha, please introduce yourself, and let us know something about you.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me on this podcast. I still remember the day I met you. It was at my first NMSDC conference in Baltimore, and you got up and you just said something so powerful. I was like, I need to go introduce myself to this woman. So afterwards, came and I chatted to you, and I was like, oh, I loved what you had to say, and I told you what I was doing, and then yeah, it's been what, almost 2 years or so. So
Yes.
I'm glad we
Time is just
connected.
like I don't know. It's like inverted. 2 years feels like 10 years. Feels like 2 months. It's going fast and slow at the same time. It's so weird.
So let me introduce myself. Again, thank you for having me on the podcast. I'm excited to share what we're doing in Europe. My name is Lushentha Naidoo. I'm the managing director for the European Supplier Diversity Program based here in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And yes, we are the newest advocacy group around the world. We're about 19 months old in terms of operations in Europe. A little bit about myself. So I am proudly South African. I grew up during apartheid South Africa, which actually stems where my passion and my purpose comes from. Because growing up during that kind of oppression, um, I was like, I have this incredible lived experience. How do I do something that's impactful in the world? So I did go on. I by dreaming big, I got a and wanting to see the world. I had a very international career. I worked at Unilever for about 15 years in finance and supply chain. And during COVID, I think everyone gets reflective. And I was like, okay, how do I want to live my life with intention and do something impactful? So I quit my job, and literally my last week, I came across this amazing networking session talking about supplier diversity and starting something in Europe. And yeah, 2 years, 2.5 years later, here I am leading the organization from setting it up as a foundation, a nonprofit here in the Netherlands. And we now have a database of about 500 ethnic minority suppliers in the EU.
That is amazing. I To see the growth, to me, that indicates the need, right? So when people latch on and there are so many early adopters, that lets you know that it was something that folks not only needed, but also wanted to see. And the thing about all advocacy groups, and I think this is an important distinction to make, is that because folks have the perception that it's almost like the mob or the mafia, where we're like strong arming companies to work with us. No, it is designed to create community. It is designed to create education hubs for
Hmm.
folks to learn about how to launch and grow their businesses. And it's also an opportunity for visibility. And I think that's the part that people don't get a lot of times about business advocacy, is that a lot of times the access is simply visibility. Folks might not even know that you're there or be able to see you, because we may not always be positioned in the same social networks for a lot of large companies, or in the same places, because maybe we don't live in the same neighborhoods, even sometimes the same towns. And so folks don't see us. And as a result of not seeing us, they don't see our businesses. So being able to be a part of networks like ESDP and other organizations. Like for me, on this side of the world, is NMSDC and WeBank. That gives us a chance to be seen. We still have to build our businesses. We still have to operate in integrity and excellence. We still have to have a marketable product and service. All the same things that all business owners have to do, except now we're not building that in vain or in a vacuum. We're building it to be seen in the market, and that is the difference maker. I just wanted to just throw that
Exactly.
out there first. I'm like,
And,
that's
and
my pitch.
and that's what we're doing, right? It's equity. It's just giving everyone a fair chance by because not everyone has that network you're talking about. Is how do we then create that so everyone has access to equal opportunities, equity, and education is my passion. So I can we can talk about that more. Is how do we have giving access to education, developing those suppliers so when they are going for that RFP and pitching, they are having all the tools, all the resources to get
Yeah.
them that RFP.
Yes, I love that. And I also want to make a note because when you talked about your own history, the merger of having such a fortunate career, and I'm going to explain why I said fortunate in a second, but then also the lived experience of growing up in the extremes of difference and discrimination cannot be overstated because and I've experienced very similar. So growing up, in a segregated region in Detroit. So if anybody who's going to end up watching this knows anything about Detroit, Detroit is predominantly black, but it is deeply segregated in the Metro Detroit region. Its racial, history and turmoil has been well documented over many years. And I remember when I studied abroad in South Africa, that was my second study abroad
Know
experience.
that.
Yes, I was in Durban for a month.
Durban.
Yes, yes. And I was going to ask her, I was like, I wonder is she from Durban? And I remember going to South Africa, and as a part, we each got to pick our own research projects, but as a part of that experience, um, we had to learn about the history of apartheid so that in our research, we could have context for what we were seeing. And I remember it as I was conducting research and then learning the history, it sounded so familiar to me because I had grown up experiencing some of those differences, seeing some of those differences, even in college, at undergrad, seeing that, and it changes you.
Hmm.
Lushentha, you're absolutely right. Like you can't leave those types of extreme circumstances and not be impacted. So then to come out of such extreme circumstances, whether or not you were the recipient of the discrimination, even just growing up in the environment changes you, then to go work in these huge corporations where you were experiencing an incredible amount of privilege just by virtue of being an employee, right? So now you are living these experiences where you are probably making more money, right, than most of the folks who are around you or that you may have grown up around. You're traveling the world, you're doing all these things. There is a level of social respect and status that you get, and it can be unnerving. And so I think a part of what it sounds like our shared advocacy is based in is the fact that like we know both sides. I know what it is like
Yeah.
to grow up and be othered, but then I also know what it is like to be the prized social person just by virtue of saying I have this badge to work for this company. And the polarization of those experiences, I think it has caused a lot of us to move into advocacy, not just because we want to put more people in privilege, but because we actually want to transform the systems that create these very different experiences of privilege and marginalization.
Wow, you put that so eloquently. I mean, I feel even closer to you now, knowing that you've been to my hometown and you've had the same experiences. I didn't know about that you grew up in Detroit, and that's what it is. It was and people don't realize that things like apartheid and your segregation happened in the 90s. I mean,
Yes.
pa-
Yes, folks
apparently in
think
the
it was, like, in
1994.
1817. I'm like, "No." Like, my uncle got some stories, right? Like, you know?
Because everyone's like, how old are you? Because that happened in the 60s. I was like, no, 1994 was when
Yes.
Mandela became president.
Yes.
I
Yes.
remember that that's when my life changed like that. Because my parents, people who don't know much about apartheid, but based on your skin color, it depended on what kind of life you lived, what education you had. The darker your skin, the lower skills you were allowed.
Yes.
Dad is one of the smartest people I knew, but he wasn't allowed to have this tertiary education. My brother and I are the first generation to go to university. And it's not it was like, oh, it was handed to you. I think I worked from the age of 6 years old because my dad was like, one day things are gonna change and you're gonna grab all those opportunities with both hands. So we worked our asses off. Sorry, I said the word and we
No, you're fine. This is an adult
but
podcast, you're good.
But it was from my people don't realize it. I didn't have a normal child. I mean, yes, I had a great childhood play stuff, but it was academics because you're gonna change. Things are gonna change, and you're gonna grab those. You're gonna have a different life to what we had. And I didn't understand it at the time until I experienced this privilege you talked about. I was like, from one day to the next, I was taken from my ethnicity was Indian, and you know how it is. You actually
Yes.
separated by the type of ethnicity. And then one day to the next, I was put to a Model C school, which is a former white school. And it blew my mind that I was sitting in a class of like 40 kids sharing textbooks, like books. And then I would go to the school being probably one of three non-white kids in my class. And I was like, wait, you get not only just your own textbooks, but they have a swimming pool. They have tennis courts. They have space. I'm like, and this is like 10 minutes from my house. How are
Yes.
we living in the same
It's a different
place,
world, yes.
It's a
I had an
different world.
experience like that because I was a band kid, and so, in Michigan, you have, like, band and orchestra festivals, but they would host them at different schools. And when we would go, I mean, we would almost be in tears because we had a world class. Now, mind you, I'm sorry, let me make this clarification. I went to the top high school in Detroit Public Schools. Like to this day, it is number one. It is ranked around the country, produces politicians, business owners, like the elites of the city went to this school, right? And we still were like wearing coats in the classroom because the heat didn't half work, like, selling chicken dinners to make sure we could pay for this because the school system's budget was right. So we would go to these other, you know, to these festivals at other schools. And mind you, we're wearing like old uniforms that are probably like 10 years old. You got to rent it every
Hand me
year from the
down.
little like closet where they keep all the stuff hoping it fit, and they would have a band room that looked like a concert hall. I mean, multiple levels. Cause we in this little cramped classroom. So you got to like sit up to make sure you could see over the such and such player cause they taller. And they had like the levels and state of the art instruments and state of the art sounds and acoustics. And we were like, what? Looking at their gyms, their cafeterias, and we couldn't believe it. And this was like you said, 10, 15 minutes from the city of Detroit. And that was the beginning, I think, for a lot of us to realize that while we were at the top of a hierarchy in our city, there is a whole other level of privilege that you can experience. And then we understood exactly what your parents told you because they would tell us, you are the best, but the goal is for you to be the best in your integrity. Reach behind and help others. Create ways
Uh-huh.
for like, and we would be like, okay, that's fine. Yeah, y'all keep. But when we started having those experiences in high school, at the top of college, we get it now. And even now to this day, like I'll bump into alums or folks I went to school with in different cities who sit and have lunch or whatever. And they're like, I can't believe like that we were making it, even though clearly the money was not there. Like that's how we knew our teachers loved us. Cause they would push for us to go to other countries to study or sing or play or what. Like we didn't know. And to your point, yeah, you do have those watershed moments where your life fundamentally changes. And then you're like, okay, now what am I going to do with this gift of privilege that I've been given? Because I can either sit in it and sit like It's a cartoon that was here in the States called Darkwing Duck. And so we could sit
Remember
there
it?
like Scrooge McDuck, just like counting all our little coins and stuff. Or we could say, hey, I want others to experience the stabilization that I've been able to see. Where it's like, I know that I'll be able to pay my rent. I know I'll be able to clear a mortgage. I know that I have a network of access that I can ask someone to make an introduction to me because I've built that. How can I make that for other people? And I think that to me, that's when I knew I made it. When my heart matched my ability to do that for other folks.
I love that. I really do. And yeah, we have this lived experience, and I was like, what can I do with this? I was truly, even though I worked at corporate for almost 15 years and I made it to director level, but I was always driving the DEI activities on the side. And I got to a point where I'm like, I mean, my day job was demanding. I was back pre-COVID, 3 countries in a week in Europe, and I was still leading the ERG for women and trying to push things on intersectionality. And I was always hitting this like the the roof on it. And straight, I was like, okay, have I done all I can here now? But I am getting my energy from the day is coming from this piece of work. So maybe I should go and do this full time. And
Yes.
when I told this to like friends and family, like, you're crazy. What are you doing? You're throwing away your career. And it was the hardest thing for me was actually go tell my family because they sacrificed so much for me. And it's not like they're not proud of what I'm doing now, but like my dad worked so much to make sure that we had this better life. But now I'm at this point where I'm defining what this better life is for me and how can I make the lives of other also better.
I'm so happy you brought up that pull and the tension between honoring family legacy and honoring social and societal legacy. Because for a lot of us who do this work, who are first generation entrepreneurs, first generation, middle class or affluent, there is that pull because uh, the image that our families had of what success looked like, not only were we working toward that, but it was also our opportunity to see and know what belonging felt like. So we have a place in the family because we are working toward that goal. When we choose a new goal, then it's like, okay, well, where is, in a way, like, where is my belonging in the family? Because it's like Lushentha, the smart one. Lushentha is the executive at da da da, and you get a lot of identity from that. You get a ton of
Exactly.
identity from saying that.
Uh-huh.
And yes, like what happens when that identity shifts and you have to educate your family on the importance or value of having pride in this new identity too, not just the other.
Exactly. And it took me, I think, 3 years to
Mm,
actually shift out and be like, because I always had this thought, and I was like, but when COVID happened, I was like, no, when we emerge from this, I need to do something different. But
mhm.
I think honestly, like it took me that long to make the shift because it's risky, right? And I also
Yes, it
felt
is.
like in a way, oh my God, am I letting people down? I always have this thing about my about letting people down. So when I had the courage to tell them, I was like, I took a sabbatical. I took a sabbatical and I traveled for a while and I came out and I was like, no, now I'm certain this is what I do. So I told them. And actually, what surprised me was they were more supportive than I expected.
Mm,
And I was like, oh, okay. Not this is a good feeling. They're like, we trust you. You do what's best for you. So that was really great. And even though I didn't know what I was doing next, and when I started this up, they definitely they know I'm an advocate at heart.
yes,
And yeah, it's people. I had some of my not mentors, but my advisors who said like you're throwing away your career, and I'm like, why does it always have to be like this? Can it not just
yeah,
be the next chapter? And this is what
yeah,
I do, and I don't know what I will do next, but this is what I'm doing right now, and this is what I mean, you've seen the journey that we've had. It
yes.
isn't easy. I honestly thought, okay, coming, moving away from my corporate role, I'll have a bit of a breather. No, this is not
No,
the case.
no.
You it's tested my resilience like you wouldn't believe, especially this last 8 months.
So that's what I was going to ask because obviously supplier diversity and supplier enablement has changed dramatically over the last couple years, but especially this year. You know, can you share the most impactful changes and trends that you've noticed?
So I think where we are, and maybe it's beneficial for us, is that we're so early on the journey here. And I say the EU because the UK is more advanced on it. I think in the US it started almost 50 years ago, UK 20 years ago. And here the topic of supply inclusion, supply diversity is fresh. I mean, even when I was saying earlier, it's like when we talk about diversity here, it's automatically gender diversity.
Yes.
If we talk intersectionality, people are like, intersection, what? Talking about race and ethnicity is very sensitive, very, very sensitive. Even collecting data is, um, it's almost impossible because of regulations here. So, in a way, yes, I feel like the US has led the way, and you guys are going through so much changes, which is impacting us in Europe. But at the same time, we were still sort of defining what is in Europe. I think where we've progressed is before we just had two other advocacy groups. Now there's us. And the challenges we face, I mean, I think we're definitely opening up for more small business engagement. You see things in terms of like social, there's more drive for social value, for ESG. There's different government regulations to help small businesses to grow. What I like about in the Netherlands, you'll see like one of my favorite topics, payment terms for small businesses is 30 days here. I mean, versus 90 days, we'll take the 30 days. I would like it to reduce even further, but that's some progress here. And I see then, like, because ESDP was born after Black Lives Matters, and obviously there was a push. And uh, now you see who truly stands by the values. So there is still support for the advocacy groups here. I was telling you earlier, we had an event in Paris, and doing this kind of work in France is hard. I joke around. Sometimes I think people throw tomatoes at me. But we had a packed room in the middle of Paris with 100 people, which is big for us, talking about these amazing topics, having Coca-Cola, Fernando coming over from the US, EY there, CBRE, these are the companies are like, nope, we're going to still do this. And as tiring as it was, when I have events like that with my team, I'm like, it makes it all worth it. And I think the biggest shift is obviously immigration has grown. So the need for what we're doing is definitely is there. But at the same time, you see the rise of the far right.
Yeah.
So what you're seeing in the US,
Yes.
you're
It's happening
seeing, you
worldwide.
definitely feel the shift here, but
Yeah.
it just makes the need for what we are doing even more important. And this is where I say the resilience is tested because things
Yeah.
you see what's happening in Germany, the Netherlands, we have a far right government which collapsed, and now we have elections coming up in October.
I'm so happy that you brought up is three aspects which tie into intersectionality actually because place matters and not just place where the work is taking place but the places where partners originate. So of course I'm based in Atlanta, home of Coca-Cola. Well, if you look at the demographics of Coca-Cola's hometown, right, or base town, yeah, they probably would stand behind the work because that reflects where their headquarters is already located, right? And you'll see similar commitments from companies where their either home base or largest employee bases or largest customer bases are based. If they are diverse, they're probably going to hold on to diversity because it's in their best interest. And I think that that's the piece that gets lost sometimes in supplier diversity conversations because folks assume that it's just like rabbit out of the hat, we gonna support today and then tomorrow we're not. No, companies have whole departments, and believe me, I done worked in diversity at some large companies, doing this work a long time. I know who's in the room because I've been in the room about where, well, we're launching this new product in da 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 city or da 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 country. We can't afford to pull out of this program. And I bring that up as a point because, particularly as a small business owner, and I know this is controversial, but you can't always afford to care why somebody is supporting you. I know that sounds crazy. I know that's probably like it's a fight because you want people to support you for altruism, but there are going to be some companies that are just in it for the money. There's going to be some companies that are just in it because they want such and such award from this group. And guess what? We'll take that too. It doesn't mean that you do shady business. It doesn't mean that you sell your soul, but it means that you recognize that companies are made up of many different stakeholders and everybody is not in it for self-actualization reasons. I have this motivation matrix that I created, or grid, and it started out of my DEI trainings because when I would go and do DEI consulting in companies, folks will say, well, we want people to care about folks' lives. And I was like, no, that's caring about security. Some people only care about prestige. Like if they can't get public back pats for helping out minorities or women, they're not going to get involved. So you have to include some reward for that person because guess what? They're the VP of da 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 department. And that same mindset is also applicable to business development and supplier diversity. Some people are only in it because I know if I market to that community, we gonna make millions of dollars. Okay, like you know what I mean? Like we can't we can't expect everybody to just do things for the heart of it. That's just not realistic. Because to be honest, we don't always just do everything we do for the heart of it. Right? Like just like you and I are driven by the desire to see a different world than when we grew up, that is just as valid as the person who is like, I always dreamed of getting an award. All right, fine. We'll work with that. Like, I'll take that today because this is a chess move to get us further along this larger journey that needs to take
Exactly.
place.
Listen, I'll take any support I can get, no matter how it's packaged. Obviously, I wanted to come in a more altruistic way. And listen, those are the people that are standing by our side right now. And
Yep.
it's true about people. I put them in boxes, I in like numbers of five. There's the four fives who I think they're gonna be your advocate. The three, they're borderline, they're gonna swing, they just need a little nudge. The two, you need a bit of education and awareness. And not everyone, let's face it, I'm naturally an empathetic person. Not everyone is.
They
How do
not.
you then get
Nope.
them? And I found like there's so much power in storytelling. Not everyone has had that same lived experience, so it's hard for them to understand. Um, and like you wouldn't believe it, but I only started sharing my personal story about 3 years ago publicly because it's still so deep rooted. We didn't go into like the deep conversations, but one day over coffee or cocktail. I mean, you've also experienced what Durban is like. I had to shift that anger into something positive. That pain. And you can't assume now somebody who hasn't gone through that is just going to get it like that. So I will then invest time in getting that person on the why. I'll like come to our events and they leave there and they realize because a lot of it is fear of like then also being othered. I'm like, see what a welcoming environment is, how engaged, and no one talks about putting in like in boxes and they leave there and they're like, I like this. Okay, I'll join. Some people like it's not for me, it's fine. And then there's the ones which I'm like, I'm not going to even waste my energy on.
That's the one fact. Yeah. And that and I'm so happy you said that. I love that the four fives because those are the people who we spend so much energy, time, and just like resources trying to pull to. They're never gonna buy into it. There are some people
But
who
that's
will
okay.
never support supplier diversity, business. And a lot of those people, if you think about it, they were raised and, dare I say, groomed to believe that success is a pie. And if you are taking anything bigger than a sliver, you're taking my pie instead of seeing, No, it's actually a whole bakery and there are more ingredients in the back.
Exactly.
So it's
How
like,
do we bake a bigger pie?
yes, like, and guess what? Even if you don't see your chocolate croissant, just ask them because they got some more cooling in the back. Like, that's just what you see today. But we haven't been raised in that type of economic mindset. It is very much you are taking something that inherently belongs to me, and that's the problem.
Exactly. And it's like, how do we, and what's wrong with a little competition? If you know you're good at what you're doing, what you scared of?
There we go. I think, and so that leads to my next question, which is, so as founders and entrepreneurs from underrepresented groups, whether that's minorities, by gender, by sexual orientation, by any of the identity dimensions, how can we be better self advocates? Because again, we are coming into environments where there are folks who are assuming that we're taking something from them by simply entering into the competitive business market. So, how can we be better self advocates as we enter that market to compete?
I think also, that the term that I'm going to say is Ubuntu. You're familiar with South Africa? I am because we are, which is the philosophy that humanity is based on the plural and not the singular. And that is instilled in my DNA. It's the way I lead ESDP is about community. Listen, we need to be helping each other and also your self advocacy. And this is what I've learned also